back. James Harden right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey.
Joel Embiid.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Swap Podcast. My name is Sean Barnard as usual. No James today, but I'm here with a special guest. We got Mike Greger of Heavy.com, my coworker over at Heavy, who, of course, does some awesome Sixers and Eagles content over there. So, Mike, appreciate you for coming on. And how you doing today?
Awesome. I mean, well, tough loss for the Eagles last night, obviously, but
Yeah.
glad to be on with you, Sean, and talk some hoops because it's a little touch and go early in the season, but looks like they're turning things around.
Yeah, definitely coming off a rough one last night for everyone in the building there, and just a brutal way to end that. But we are here talking some Sixers today. Mike, of course, is on the beat this year and doing his best job reporting this team. So make sure to drop a follow. I'll tag him on everything for all the inside scoop from what guys are saying and everything else. And to start talking about the Sixers, I feel like we would be remiss without Joel Embiid right now. So I'll start off with you, Mike. Just talk about kind of like we saw the progression of a little bit of a slow start to the season for Embiid. Some injury concerns, some not quite in shape, and he's done a pretty good job of squashing these past couple games. So does it feel like he's turned a corner? And just talk to me a little bit about these last couple games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I can add that has been said already. Honestly, he's been incredible. I mean, this is the Embiid, maybe even a better version than it was at times last year. Just he's dominating. I mean, he always talks about I want to dominate, right? And he's dominating right now, and it's. I think sometimes we look at the offensive numbers and then you don't see the impact that he's making on the defensive end too, with the swats he had late in that game the other night to just kind of close it out. Just really impressive. And then the passing, right? He talked about working on his passing throughout the offseason. We saw the videos of him dribbling around the perimeter, looking like a guard. And I think the stat was he's had like 14 assists that have turned into 32 points over the past two games. Just incredible. I don't know. I think injuries, obviously, he said he was dealing with some injuries this year again. And then I'm not going to start a controversy with Harden here, but it just seems like they run the offense a little differently when they can use him at point center and then they're not waiting for Harden to set everything up. Now, they'll get their chemistry together. I'm not going down that road, but just this version of Embiid is just pure dominance, and he's back in MVP form.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is amazing. And of course, coming off the Hawks game, which he had a very good performance, and then just to take it to a whole nother level against that Jazz game, which I'll even go as far to say I think that might be the best game I've ever seen him play. And just to run through his numbers real quick, ending with 59 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, 7 blocks, shot 19 of 28 from the field. And just ridiculous stuff. And we're talking about a 59-point scorer, a guy who was responsible through his scoring assists for 74% of the Sixers' points. And I'm honestly more impressed with what he did defensively. Like, I haven't seen him that locked in this year. The way this 7 blocks, tying a career high, absolutely absurd. And just like there were times, like there was a moment where Colin Sexton took him right at it late in that game, where it was one of those like, I can't believe he's even trying that at this point. Like, haven't you learned by now in this game? And amazing. And also, like you mentioned, the passing, it felt like, and to me, this is a huge stride forward in his game, is it felt like he just read the game way better than I think we've seen him in a lot of cases. Like, it felt like whatever the Jazz threw at him, he just simply like analyzed it, read it, being like, all right, I can get to my spot this way. All right, this is the pass this way. When they dropped in the zone, he just kept tucking at the top of the free throw line. When he had a man on him that he wanted, he just took it. He shot over guys. And it just was one of those just pure perfect performances that really we don't see from anybody. So I guess this is kind of the not, I don't want to say silver lining because there's obviously so much to go, but when we have this version of Joel Embiid, this is one of those pure, like, this Sixers team has a chance on every single night, because outside of him against that Jazz game, they have no business in winning that game. And it was just purely on him to just heroically kind of lift him toward the finish line. So I continue to be impressed by this guy. I know you touched a little bit on the Harden thing there. I'll make a point to you and let you kind of bounce on it. I feel like Embiid fits with Harden, but Harden doesn't necessarily fit with Embiid in the full sphere. And what I mean by that is, like, when we talk about the pick and roll numbers with Embiid and Harden is kind of the crux of everything and really should be the core of the Sixers offense. When we talk about playing through Embiid, because we've seen such a strong ball dominant force with him, especially without him, 53.5% usage rate in that Jazz game and just the numbers through the roof. But when you look at guys that you want to surround Embiid with the ball, you want either catch and shoot guys or cutters. And Harden honestly isn't either of those things. And he's obviously so brilliant with the ball and so necessary from a playmaking point. And I think it's been very beneficial to Embiid from creating points for him. But what do you kind of think of that point overall and how the Sixers work on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of a weird fit. And I mean, we saw that video, right, at training camp of Doc Rivers taking Harden aside and kind of be like, you guys got to figure it out. You guys have to get the chemistry right. And I don't know that they still have, and maybe their games are not going to mesh like that. I mean, that's the goal that they do. But we really haven't seen outside of the pick and roll opportunities. I just feel like when Embiid's playing that kind of point center position, he's the first option at all times.
Right.
And you want to get him the ball and kind of control it and set other people up. And that doesn't always happen when Harden's out there doing the Harden thing and kind of lumbering around and the offense. I mean, he's plotting style of play. Doesn't always work with Embiid because Embiid's also has a plotting style of play when he has the ball in his hands. So I don't know. It's still a work in progress, but I mean, it's not something that you're going to give up on. I mean, Harden's a Hall of Famer. And Embiid's on pace to be a Hall of Famer if he stays healthy, right? And this team should be in the mix for a championship if they can figure it out. And I guess that would bring in the next point is Doc Rivers the guy that can make that happen? But I mean, we're getting there.
Yeah, definitely. And we can slide right through that. I mean, it feels like the noise has kind of quieted a little bit. Definitely a disappointing start to the season for the Sixers from all accounts. And I personally don't put that fully on Doc. I know there are people that are. Like, to me, I throw honestly more of that responsibility on Embiid for kind of, I don't even say like the fitness stuff. He obviously dealt with a bunch this offseason, but it was just kind of the mentally not seeming to be fully there. And he's a guy that like wears his heart on his sleeve with his body language. You can just kind of tell what he's locked in. I would say more so than the general NBA player, which is kind of unfair to him because you can just like see it all the time. But I could see that a lot. And I think that is very just infectious to the team on like, the team reflects the personality, the mentality, the energy that Embiid brings. So it's tough. But with that being said, there's still some like similar criticisms of Doc Rivers that we've seen through the years. So I guess we'll start here. Like, what's your kind of read on the feeling of Doc with this team and just overall his fit with everybody?
So, I mean, I'm a little close to it because I'm down there and I do ask some questions here and there in press conferences and I like him, right? Mm-hmm. He's great personality. I know the players love him. He's a player's first coach. I mean, you know, half of those guys came here because they wanted to play for Doc Rivers. So that's not an issue. But I do sometimes question some of the, you know, late game decisions he makes, some of the lineup rotations and stuff that he makes. Playing time. I don't like early in the season. I don't know why Thibault wasn't playing. I mean, I know the shooting's an issue, but regardless of if he's not making 3-pointers, if you're not going to play him, you want to trade him, right? So why isn't he seeing minutes? And he looked great the other night in a starting role. I think he was plus 18. So it's those things that I question with Doc. But in terms of has the team lost trust in him, confidence in him? Do they not like him? I don't think that's an issue at all. And to think that you're going to fire a coach 10 games into a season they started, or less than that, I think he's getting booed the other night at Wells Fargo Center. It's like, I get it. There's this history with him, and all my friends are all my text threads with my friends. They're all like, the season doesn't start until they fire Doc Rivers. And I'm like, okay, but let's give it some time. I mean, at least get to the All-Star break. I think some of that is coming off the Phillies World Series too, where they fired the coach and then they made the World Series, but it's not apples to apples like that. Yeah. And Doc Rivers does have a pedigree. I mean, I know it was a long time ago, and I know people think that he should have won multiple championships with the Celtics with that Hall of Fame caliber starting five. But he did win a championship, and the guys like him. So I would stick this thing out and see how it goes. If they're fighting for a playoff spot, you know, going into the All-Star break, like, then maybe you think about it. But that also depends on how much you trust in Sam Cassell. Like, is he the guy that you're going to bring up? Because they like Jorger a lot too, and he has head coaching experience.
Right.
So if you're going to make that move, and I don't make that move unless they're really, really looking bad and tanking. But if you're going to make that move, you better have plan B ready to go.
Yeah, it's something you have to be absolutely sure of, and kind of as you say, like the people saying like the season doesn't start until Doc Rivers is fired. Like I don't think we're getting the season then, so I think people should kind of understand like this is probably going to be a see it through to the year, regardless of what the public opinion is. And the Sixers have, on all accounts, been very projected Doc highly and shown their faith in him both publicly and just about every player on the team. Daryl Morey specifically has gone out on a limb to say how much he likes working with Doc and crediting him for stuff that he has earned credit for. And I don't know, the Thibault thing I agree with. And it's just so weird to go from in the first 5 games to play under 6 total minutes to now this guy looks like he might be a part of the starting lineup for possibly moving forward, depending on how things shake out. And also in fairness to Doc, like Embiid's missed time already. Harden has this foot injury. Like it hasn't been a smooth sailing to start the season on all accounts. And one of the things I've thought has been interesting is, and I didn't prep you for this question, so I'm sorry to be thrown at you, but one of the things that kind of has come out on like not I don't want to say excuse, but another reason for the slow start has been kind of disappointment from the new additions. Do you feel that way as far as the guys they brought in?
A little bit. I think this has been said before too, but with PJ Tucker, I think he's still got a little bit. He had that little knee scope, I think, before the season. I think there's still something going on there. And then he had a hip injury the other day. So I'm not sure that he's 100% healthy. But outside of that, he's a guy that if you really watch the game, you can't really look at the box score with him, right? He's always hustling and diving and rebounds and stuff. He's not going to score you 15 points a game. That's just not who he is. He's going to hit a couple of corner threes and play really solid defense and get loose balls. So I don't have an issue with him. Harrell, you can make the argument. It's weird with Harrell because when he came in the other night and he gave him that shot energy, it was incredible, but it doesn't seem to be there in heavy doses. So, but that goes back to this whole controversy with the backup center position that's been going on for years now. Does that go back to Doc? Can he not develop these guys, or is he too honed in on his guys that he likes and brings over from other teams? I don't know, because it just seemed like Charles Bassey didn't really get a legit shot here because he had some really good stretches when they brought him in last year. I thought he was going to be a player. So I don't know. But as far as the new additions in general, I don't see them being a problem. Melton's been terrific. I mean, you mentioned this. You tweeted this, I think, a week or two ago. He's just been terrific defensively. He goes through some streaky stretches with the three ball, but that's to be expected. He gets steals. He's a great passer. I mean, I would say outside of drafting Maxey, I guess one of Daryl Morey's best moves was trading for him. So I'm not. I mean, if you want to pick on Harrell, fine. But outside of that, I don't have a problem with any of the offseason moves they made.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Melton's been absolutely terrific. He's exceeded my expectations even. And I especially think, considering our backcourt of Harden and Maxey both having their defensive deficiencies for different reasons, having Melton as kind of like a third guy to plug in on there is super huge when you think about rotations and just matchups on the court. Tucker is never going to be a guy that shows up in the box score, and he hasn't for his whole career. That's just who he is. The thing that has concerned me a little bit with him is just like, it feels, and this is more of a roster construction thing than a PJ Tucker specifically, but he hasn't been able to just guard every guy on the court. I think that's being asked of him, and it's again not really his fault. Like we've seen him on Kristaps Porzingis, which just isn't fair. Kristaps just shooting over him, guarding Giannis, guarding Tatum. Like these are tough asks from a guy that's 37 years old. And my concern Sixers wise is it feels like it's like if Tucker can't guard him, then it's kind of like, oh well. And Thibault's gotten some run on guys more so lately. It wasn't the case to start the season, as you mentioned. And then beyond that, I agree. I think Harrell's been the only one that's been disappointing. But that's also kind of like he was more or less the icing on the cake to the offseason. Like this wasn't a guy we super invested in and had huge plans. It just kind of worked out. The legal troubles contributed to him being available. Doc Rivers, the relationship, he was obviously credited with bringing him in. And I mean, it's tough because like he's playing the least minutes he has since he's a rookie. And like him and B-Ball Paul, they feel like very similar as far as like the sparks of life, but in very different areas of their game. And I'm interested to see, and I'll get your thoughts on this. I personally feel I don't think Doc particularly trusts either one of them, Harrell or Reed. I think he would feel best going small ball, having PJ Tucker as the 5 just about all the time. How do you think that backup center situation just shakes out through the season? There's a lot more trial and error.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Doc said that too, right? It's going to be an experiment all year with that. Yeah, he started Tucker at center multiple times, and he said that during training camp that he was going to do that. I know with Reed, a lot of it's the foul trouble, but then he's so aggressive, and that's when he's at his best. So, do you want him not to do that just to save those fouls? You don't, because Embiid's going to get the bulk of the minutes anyway.
Right.
So I think, yeah, they're just going to play it out at the backup 5 spot and just see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. I'm more in the team of let Paul use all his fouls if he has to, because like at best he's getting like maybe 15 minutes a game. So if you use your 6 fouls in those 15 minutes, man, like go for it. I'd rather you be balls to the walls, do your thing. And I guess one of the other kind of lingering concerns that I think showing face, particularly in Harden's absence, is a little bit of what Tyrese Maxey's long-term role is, both with the Sixers and a guy who I don't want to complain about him because he's been nothing short of terrific through his entire Sixers tenure since coming to the league, has blown past all expectations, both individually with the team and with his role. But looking at like where he truly fits, I think we saw him really be unlocked further last year once Harden came to the team, having a guy that can create for him, create open looks, have him just focus on scoring. He's obviously small in stature, 6'2", looks more natural as a point guard, but I just don't think I see that being his long-term role. And I think we're seeing without Harden on the court, not that he struggles as a playmaker, but it's just not his most natural. And the Sixers have looked better playing through Joel as that point center, like you pointed out, than Maxey as kind of a point guard. So what do you think about his kind of long-term fit with the Sixers? And is there any concern of him kind of being just at least less efficient without Harden next to him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that you want the ball in his hands, but not to be that facilitator, like you just said. Like he can pass. I mean, they want him to pass, but I think that's kind of messing with his mental aspect of his game, because he's trying to pass too much. And that's not when he's at his best. He's got to be driving to the hoop, not even trying to draw fouls. Just blow past people with your speed, get to the rack. It's great that he can shoot threes now. That's a huge asset, but he's not a guy you want camping out. That's Tobias's job. Don't camp out the 3-point line, and I don't want him jacking eight triples a game, right? He's got to use his speed to get to the rack, and I think whether it was Doc not making that clear to him enough, or whether he's just confused mentally now because he's trying to be this facilitator, he's just got to get back to being Maxey. Right. And we're seeing it a little bit, and that's going to be a mental struggle. And yeah, when Harden comes back, we'll see how that all fits together again. But I love Maxey, and I know Sean Devaney's got all these reports about possibly Sixers still interested in Durant, and obviously he'd be a part of that package. I don't want to see it. I mean, he's just turned 22, right? And so if this thing doesn't work with Harden and Embiid and everything else, this team's kind of old, right? So Maxey's going to be your guy. And that's the guy. If you're going to break this thing up and try to build it back up, Maxey's the guy I want to build it around.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you make a ton of great points there. I think I get the noise, and there's always going to be swirling. And I'm sure Daryl, we know him at his track record. I'm sure he's asking around and at least looking. I don't think I see any kind of big move with this team. I think there probably will be some sort of trade or some sort of – they're only carrying 14 on the roster, so there is that extra slot. There is a little cap room to work with. So I think there will be a move that Morey is targeting or keeping an eye on. I don't think there will be anything near the magnitude of a Durant deal. And to get back to Maxey, it's like you said, like this is a guy who's done everything to be on the pathway of becoming a max player in the NBA, a guy that you should be comfortable passing the torch to past the Joel era. And I even would go as far to say, I think there's a world where this Sixers team can be more successful, where maybe Embiid is not the guy who has to score 59 points. Like maybe he's a guy who is locked in defensively, controls the boards, is more focused with that, not as high usage on offense. And maybe Maxey can develop into a guy who carries more of that offensive torch. And I'm talking like maybe 3 or 4 3 or 4 years down the line from now. Embiid's obviously in his prime and so elite at what he does right now. But I think that's like a winning formula that shouldn't be given up with. And they really, for having this guy fall to the 21st pick, fall in their laps, this really has, to me, extended the Sixers championship window in a way that I was a little pessimistic about looking past Embiid before. So I want no part of it. And what do you think the chances are that there is some sort of big deal, or do you think it would be more minimal stuff?
I agree. That's something more minimal. They're definitely going to do something, but
Yeah.
it's probably going to be. I don't know if they even tinker with trying to bring another big in here, but maybe another stretch forward, maybe another ball handler, because I know Doc loves his ball handlers, and someone that plays defense. Someone that plays defense that can shoot threes, right? You want as many as those guys that you can have on this team around Embiid. So I think something along those lines. I don't see any blockbuster deal. And to be honest with you, just to get back to Durant, I know he's a Hall of Famer. I know he's an MVP, Finals MVP. I know the resume. I kind of don't want him here.
Yeah.
I know that sounds stupid, but for the amount you have to give up to get him, and he's kind of had some kind of a little bit of a head case recently, and I just don't know that I want to bring that into this environment.
Yeah, definitely not a good vibes guy when you look at him. We know there was the fallout, whether it was a fallout with Harden or just the situation, whatever. I don't think Brooklyn's going to be itching to get back on the negotiating table with Daryl Morey just because of how that, and Ben Simmons there is obviously not the player they expected to get. I personally, I've never been like a huge Ben guy, but I'm shocked by how bad he has looked to start this year. And that's a version of a player like by far worse than we ever saw him in a Sixers uniform that I can't believe. But as far as Durant too, like we've seen teams now mortgage their future and just build around this guy, and it already blow up in their face, as is being shown in Brooklyn. Coming down to even them like firing Steve Nash so shortly into the season, like to me that's very clearly like, I mean, he called for Nash and to be fired this offseason and the GM, and like to see this happen so quickly, it's very much one of those like teams bowing down to him more than I think the balance of power should traditionally be the case. And the Sixers, like I think to me that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But to talk about the current Sixers again, it does feel like they're turning a little bit of a corner. Like they've kind of got back. And this, again, I think is mostly a credit to getting back to his true self. Have you seen kind of strides forward in their play? And also they had a brutal stretch to start this season. So I think that plays a role in it too. But have you seen the play look better as of late? And are you encouraged by what you're seeing on the court?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean that Suns game, and I know the Suns are kind of undermanned right now, but I mean, I really thought that defensively, anyway, they got back to the identity that they want to have.
Yeah.
Embiid was still kind of not offensively there, but now what we've seen the past 2 nights out of him, I think they've kind of turned the corner. Now I want to see it. Then you had that Hawks game before the home Hawks game that they looked terrible. So I do think they're turning a corner. It's a long season. It's a long season, Sean. Like, people that are just like, this team, I know this team can't sneak into the playoffs. This is a team constructed to be in the NBA Finals. And I think anything less than a Finals appearance is kind of a failure when you look at all the moves that they made. But it's a long season. I'm not going to give up on them just because they were 5-7 or whatever they were after 12 games.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that should be put into perspective more, just how many games are played, how many months we still have to go before crunch time. And think about like a 17-game football season. Like there's basically like it takes 5 basketball games for like the same amount of impact as like one football game. When we think about like the reactionary takes, and there's just going to be kind of the ebbs and flows of the season. But I agree. I think they're getting closer to their identity, and maybe this is me looking at it purely through like Sixers lenses and trying to be overly optimistic. But I think there could be something beneficial of Embiid finding himself, finding his core, and then adding Harden back to the mix to kind of get that balance right, because it did feel like there was just a little bit, and they're going to have to work on this when they get back, but just too much of the your turn, my turn kind of offense, and getting them to kind of bring out the best in each other. And some of that I do think went down to Embiid not being at his full best. So if we have this version of Embiid, a guy who, I can't believe I'm saying it, but might have taken another step forward after last year, just based on what he's done this weekend. And that's crazy to say, but could be the case, and we'll see as the season goes. But I think there could be something beneficial about bringing Harden back into the mix. Do you think that could be the case?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you look about, and we talk about team chemistry, And, these football teams like the Eagles have a month of training camp to get it together, practice every day. The Sixers were at training camp for a week.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they practice every day, but it's you can't build chemistry that way. They just need to play games together. They need to know each other's tendencies, and just, hang out off the court. I know some of these guys went through COVID, not the new pieces, but some of the older guys went through COVID together, and they weren't together all the time. It was a weird situation. And now they can hang out when they go on road games. They're at practice every day. They're building bonds, and that's going to take time to build that in a long 82 game basketball season. So I wouldn't worry. There was a point early in the season where I was a little worried, just based on, I think we talked about body language. Yeah. And Embiid's body language just didn't look good to me, lumbering and putting his head down, and even rebounding. And I think he talked about it. Just, he was scared to use his fingers, outstretch his fingers to go up for rebounds because of the surgeries he had in the offseason. And it showed. Yeah. And I think he's finally getting that confidence back, and he's smiling more. I'm sure you saw that clip of him talking to Markkanen the other night. Yeah, before he shot those free throws. I had to get Arthur to bed. You got to miss these. I'm not going to overtime. That's what you want from him. The big fella. He's this fun guy that just dominates on the inside, in the paint, and everywhere. And I think we're finally seeing that. I don't know that he needs to be on Twitter all the time, cracking jokes and instigating with people, but he's got to find that happy medium where he can be his fun-loving self and still play really good basketball. And I think it's only a 2-game sample size, but he's looking like he's getting back to that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to me, that was kind of the red flags that popped into my head early in the season. Is I was more concerned about that than anything, because he is a different guy when he's having fun versus when he's not. And to me, it was kind of a bummer to see, this is the first time in his career that we've seen a roster purely constructed to optimize Joel Embiid. We brought in guys purely to be built around him, because there's always been the weird blend of trying to balance Simmons and Embiid. And now that we're past it, I feel like we can fully acknowledge that, while they weren't completely broken together, they just didn't have skill sets that were meant to match up just in the ways they played. And now we're bringing guys like PJ Tucker, like DeAnthony Melton, who are just pure fits around him. And to see him not completely locked in to start the season, I think was kind of disappointing, but we're seeing it pick back up and rev back up. And this guy's been through a lot in terms of injuries, everything, all the off the court stuff that he's just, we got to cut him a little slack, I think, more than I give him. And I'm happy to see him waking up. And that's the biggest sign of positivity moving forward to me. Are there any other kind of changes that you want to see with this team as they continue to build outside of Embiid?
I mean, I think, like I said, I think the Maxey thing to me is still the biggest piece. Just how do we use him effectively on a every night basis, and not put him out there to be the traditional point guard where he's passing and not shoot threes all game long. I want to see him just attack and just always be in attack mode, because I feel like you're kind of wasting him if you're not. And you're trying to force him to be something he's not. And I think in all honesty, I mean, Harden and Embiid obviously are the two best players on the team. But to me, Maxey's the key to the whole thing. If you figure out how to utilize him the right way. I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago. I was like, well, he's your third scoring option. And they said, no, he should be your second scoring option. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, the way Harden moves the ball around, if you want to use him as the main facilitator and Embiid's number one and make Maxey your number two, I think that might be a good way to make this team really start rolling.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I would love to see it. A lot to build off. There's obviously going to be some more kind of updates closer to the timeline when exactly we're going to see Harden coming back. That'll be the next step of progression toward this team. But Mike, I appreciate you coming on today. I'll let everyone know where they can check out your work and socials and everything else you want to plug.
Yeah, man, it's at Mike_Gregor on Twitter. Please follow me. And I don't tweet as enough as I should, but I'm trying to get better at that. I cover the Eagles and the Sixers, heavy.com. I also do some work for the Eagles website. So you can check my work out there. And but Heavy's my main gig, and Sixers and Eagles, and yeah, that's it, heavy.com.
Yes, sir. Make sure you guys check that out. I'll tag them below, so make sure to drop a follow. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Drop a like and subscribe if you have not already, and I'll be back with you next time.